Hi, I'm Kevin Hatley and welcome to Kevin Hatley Photography in my office. This is a channel that I've set up to share my experiences of wildlife and nature with others. So let's go. In my last two fieldcraft videos, basic fieldcraft skills and wildlife recce, which you'll find on my fieldcraft playlist, I discussed how as wildlife photographers we go out to find wildlife to photograph it. Finding them is one thing, getting closer is another. The easiest way to get close to wildlife is just to sit and hide and let the wildlife come to you. And again, I did another video on how to photograph wildlife from a hide. In this video, I'm talking about how we, as wildlife photographers, can approach wildlife on the ground, on foot. Therefore, in this video, what I want to do is share with you my knowledge and experience of getting up close with wildlife to photograph it. So what we'll do is, first thing we need to understand is wildlife behaviour and how wildlife see us. And then I'm going to talk about what I call wildlife indicators, things that we can find on the ground that give us an indication that wildlife are present. Next, we'll look at how to actually get close or how to move closer to wildlife. And what I'll do is I'll share with you my top 5 tips on getting close to wildlife. Okay, before we get into the meat of the video, what I want to do is just give you an explanation of the type of ground that I'm talking about trying to get close to wildlife. And this is a piece of land where I have a permission from the farmer and the landowner to photograph wildlife on. And I did a previous video on how to go about getting permission from landowners. So this ground is mainly open countryside, lots of mixed farmland, interspaced with long hedgerows, and there are a number of small deciduous woods which have open glides with pathways, lots of low tangled vegetation which can be a bit of a trip hazard, and the land is bordered by a small river. Wildlife, with very few exceptions, those being the ones that want to eat you, have what's known as a circle of fear. The size of that circle of fear is very much dependent on the subject that you're trying to photograph, and it will vary depending on the animal itself, from deer to foxes, badgers, hares and even birds. They all have their different size circle of fear. If you want any chance of getting close to wildlife to photograph it, then it's crucial that you understand this concept in animal behaviour with regards to the circle of fear. Getting inside the circle of fear is the name of the game for us as wildlife photographers. So what is the circle of fear? Well, it's a circle which has 4 circles contained in it, and in the centre of that circle is a subject that you're trying to photograph. Each of the 4 circles represents a certain level of threat, and I'll go through this with you, that wildlife will react in a certain way the closer that you get towards them. And it's being able to recognise those indicators, understanding the animal's behaviour, that will allow you to get that little bit closer. Okay, let's now look at the circle of fear itself and how it's made up and what it means. In circle number 4, this is where wildlife are going about their everyday life. Everything is completely normal. They're eating, they're drinking, they're moving, they're flying, they're resting, they're just going about their everyday life. They're relaxed, they're unaware and they're unprepared. Once we have made contact, we need to start thinking about our movement and are we prepared to start taking the photographs that we're after. This is probably the last chance that you're going to get to actually check your camera to make sure that you're ready to get the images that you're after. So this is just about slowing things down a little bit, checking your kit and taking your time. Okay, when we move into circle number 3, this is where wildlife begin to show an awareness, but at the same time they're not overly concerned. They're relaxed, but they're aware that something might be a threat, so they have a level of awareness. And at this level, we need to be identifying cover that we can step into should the situation change. We need to be careful underfoot, and you need to check the ground as you move for hazards that will betray your presence. So just be careful with where you're placing your feet, always checking slightly forward as you move for trip hazards and things that could give you the game away for you. This is where they're starting to be that little bit more aware. Once we move into circle 2, this is where wildlife will start to show a high level of alertness. They're now alert to the situation. They've been aware, they're now alerted to something is out there that they're not sure about, and they're going to be ready to move at any time. At this level, our next step is critical. You need to stop, take your time, move slowly and get into cover. Use your zoom to give them room. That's the way to remember at this level. Use your zoom to give them room. When we move into circle number 1, it's game over. That's it, they've gone. They've been aware, they've been alerted, they now know that there's something out there that's really threatening and they're off. For us, the game of circle of fear is over. We just need to sit back, take stock of what's happened and try and learn from that lesson that afforded them the chance to move away from us and not get the pictures that we were after. Okay, just to summarise the circle of fear, there are 4 threat levels within the circle. Circle number 4, everything's normal, wildlife are just going about their everyday life. We can just start to slow things down and get ready for the situation to change. Circle number 3, wildlife will have a certain level of awareness. They're not quite sure, but there is something out there, but they're still going about their normal day life. We need to start thinking about getting into cover should we need to, and certainly once it gets to circle number 2 where they're alert to the situation, we need to be getting into cover to get ready to get the images that we're after. And circle number 1, as I said, for the circle of fear game, for us it's all over. So how do we actually get closer to wildlife now that we understand the circle of fear? But more importantly, how do we actually move within that circle without disturbing the wildlife itself? We need to look for what are known as indicators or wildlife indicators. They allow us as wildlife photographers to read and assess the environment that we're in so that we're prepared to get into position to get the photographs that we're after. The real key here is what's known as situational awareness. So I use the mnemonic SAFE, which stands for S, you need to be switched on, you need to be alert, you need to be focused, and you need to be evaluating the situation at all times. Situational awareness is about staying ahead of the game or the situation and making the right decisions at the right time. What I want you to do now is to remember this phrase when looking for wildlife indicators. Absence of the normal versus presence of the abnormal. That's absence of the normal versus presence of the abnormal. So what is normal and what is abnormal? Experience and knowledge tells us that certain sights and sounds are normal as we go about our business moving across the ground. And this short video clip that I'm showing you now is a classic example of that. What is normal and what is abnormal. So what's new and what's missing. So getting closer, what sort of indicators will tell us that we're getting closer to wildlife? Things like colours, unnatural colours or colour changed. Things like the leaf litter on the ground that's recently been disturbed, it will stand out from its surroundings. Normal, abnormal. Disturbed vegetation or soil, pathways, tracks that have been set out by wildlife as it moves through the countryside. Laydowns and beds, deer are renowned for actually preparing beds before they pack in for the night as such. It's flattened by wildlife. Disturbed soil, sand, piles of feathers or fur that's been caught in bushes or on fences, and scat as well. And that leads us on to tracks and signs. Can you identify these 2 signs that you could find out in the countryside? Being able to identify tracks and signs will increase your chances of getting closer to wildlife. However, following tracks that are days old is unlikely to be successful, so the weather plays a critical part in how you interpret the tracks and signs that you find and the condition that they're in. For instance, this owl pellet, you'll see that it's dark and it's wet, as you can see with the roe deer sign in the ground. Again, it's dark and it's fresh, so they're quite recent. Birdsong, again, is a critical factor or a great wildlife indicator, especially bird alarms, and they can be crucial to give you a better understanding of what's about. And one bird I particularly pay attention to is the blackbird. It's normally the first bird that will either give your presence away or it'll give away the presence of a predator. If you've remained undetected and you hear a blackbird alarming, it's normally alarming because there's a predator around. And that can then identify to you that you need to really slow down or just get into a position and sit and wait and see if anything comes to you. But they will also alert of your presence as well. So the actual process of moving closer to the wildlife on the ground is, or to get nearer to wildlife, is known by the term stalking, or to stalk. We only need to look at wildlife itself, and especially wildlife predators or even our own domestic cats, to see how wildlife actually go about stalking their prey. They act very slowly, they tread very carefully, they're always alert, they maintain a low profile, and most importantly, they keep quiet. What I want to do now is share with you my top 5 tips to getting closer to wildlife. Okay, tip number 5 is managing the wind. First consideration has to be wind direction. No matter how good your camouflage is, your scent, your smell will be noticed long before your presence is seen. Especially with the likes of deer, foxes and badgers. Great sense of smell. You want the wind blowing into your face or across you rather than from behind you and blown towards your subject. So manage the wind. Tip number 4 is all to do with cover. Try and always have cover near to you, such as tree lines, hedges, ditches that you can safely step into. Try and use shadows to disguise your shadow, and be aware of skyline and silhouetting. What you want you to do is just have a little look at this series of slides that I've put together. First slide, there's an obvious approach, pretty much straight down the middle. Whereas actually you need to be looking to step towards the sides where there's more shadows and places where you can step into cover. And look ahead. Tip number 3, tracks and signs. It's a subject that I'm still learning. Observing, as we've looked at, observing your surroundings is essential for getting closer to your subjects. And observing or being able to identify tracks and signs will improve your success rate. And that's a video that in the future I'll look at putting together on tracks and signs. The critical part here is being able to identify how old they are. And as I said earlier, if you're following a track or sign that's days old, your stalk or your search is going to be pretty much fruitless. So being able to identify whether it's fresh or old is critical as well. And the weather plays a critical part in that assessment. What I want you to do is just have a little look at this and see if you can identify it. I'll give you a couple of seconds. What I found here was actually a lie down. I initially thought it was a lie down for a deer, but actually it's right next to a river. And then I found this pile of scat, and as you can see, it's really fresh. And it belongs to the mink. I know that there's mink on that river. I've seen them and I've heard them, and it's the only conclusion that I've come to. And the research that I've done has showed that. Often out in the field you'll come across piles of feathers, which are an indication that there's been a kill. And obviously depending on how fresh the feathers are, you'll be able to tell how long ago the kill was done. Normally either a fox or a sparrowhawk. And the way to tell the difference or to be able to identify which is responsible, is that if the feathers have been crushed, the likelihood is that it's a fox, and if the feathers have been plucked out of the carcass of the bird, it's going to have been a sparrowhawk or a bird of prey. Tip number 2 is to do with shadows. Shadows are your greatest ally as you try to get closer to wildlife. Disguise both your shadow and your movement. There's also another type of shadow which I call a sound shadow. And these are sounds that allow you to disguise your movement. Sounds such as running water, wind, rustling leaves, running water, waves on a beach, and even birdsong. Sounds that can disguise your movement, known as sound shadows. So tip number 2 is all about shadows and them being your greatest ally. Tip number 1 and getting closer is knowing when to stop. It's all about knowing when to stop. One false move can end your approach instantly. Remember, we discussed the circle of fear, and especially circles 2, where the wildlife is fully alerted, and circle 1 is game over. So knowing when to stop. There are occasions when you just need to stop, sit down, get into cover and sit and wait. Especially if you notice something up ahead of you that may be coming towards you. Just stop, get into cover, sit and let it come to you. Thanks for watching this edition of Kevin Hatley Photography and how to get closer to wildlife. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have actually making the video itself. It is a critical skill. Yes, you can sit and hide and let the wildlife come to you, but for me personally, being out in the countryside and trying to get close to your subject is what it's all about. So all I would ask is that if you've liked this video, could you hit the like button? Could also ask you to subscribe to my channel, Kevin Hatley Photography. It's completely free, it doesn't cost anything. And what it does, it just allows me to keep continuing my channel and growing it and share my knowledge and experience with other wildlife photographers. And I always keep saying, I'm always learning. So until the next time, stay safe, take care, and hope to see you soon. Bye for now.